So I got quite some stuff in mind for this new episode today. I'm starting, and let's get straight into it. As we all go through life, through phases, through times in which we have to brace ourselves, which we have to get through hard times, seemingly difficulties and associated burdens from all kind of experiences we go through. But these are the times where we are able to build a shield for ourselves. From these times we can grow. Resilience, perseverance is born from it. We can release all sorts of tensions in these coming hard times with the clarity that we have used to make our way through these difficult times. But this clarity is work. This understanding of oneself and one's life and the ability to solve problems is not very easy, because you get held up by your mind quite sometimes, and you definitely have to want it, because the immersion, the likelihood of avoiding it is often created in today's circumstances by the ease of avoiding it, by the possibility of withdrawing, which then brings with it the consequences of not being able to diversify in a way that could have led one beyond the pain. One learns nothing by not facing it, by not working through it, by not reflecting on it, by not illuminating it with clarity. And even if there is no tragic event, others may lead you to move toward it. Because they may have been harmed in their past and are now in a position where they need to pass it on, to get others on board, to reinforce their certainty that this is seemingly the right thing to do. What I'm talking about here would be how most people get into drug use at an early age. The reason to stop, to want to stop, goes beyond curiosity, because just being curious, trying things out, is just the first step into it. So you could also be led to it because curiosity in life is not always a bad thing. It can give you clarity that it's probably not right for you if you engage with it and are able to perceive the actual feeling after getting to know it. But yeah, everybody has a different story. One has to live through childhood traumas Another has to deal with blows of fate. And the next one could actually live a quiet and problem-free life. Curiosity grows in each and every one of us. Curiosity to see what older ones might see. First joints, first glimpses of smoking, first family glimpses of alcohol. Curiosity, it waits, it grows, and depending on the circumstances, depending on the home circumstances, one tends to get the opportunity to get into a state of intoxication or take a puff of a cig or a joint earlier than the other. Now imagine how this develops. Young teenagers go to the skate park. They sit there and see a joint being passed around in the group of older teens. They sit near. The older teens want to have a relaxed afternoon and laugh at the curiosity of the younger ones, which is drawn in their eyes. There are those who are more determined, who have more mechanisms in them, who do not want to approach more in the course of fear, which can be quite a good safety mechanisms that can benefit those who protect themselves. They might protect themselves from the uncertainty of the effect. But then there are others who dare, who risk, where curiosity prevails. And these are the ones who, having also dared to take this step, try a joint in such a situation. These are the ones who are more likely to be the center of the group and its actions later on. After some time, I became the center point for smoking something in a group. Of course, it didn't crystallize until years later. These people, like I was, are the ones who search for a solution until it is found and something is there. And if that means waiting for hours for a dealer, then you take it. I took it so many times. This immediately showed who does it just because someone else offers it, or who really wants it because it has torn them into the mantle. Sorry. I was the one in the middle who wanted to get out of the dependency of having fun only when others provided it. So I quickly found my own solution. I adjusted the amount of herb so that I could have peace for a longer period of time and not have to get something immediately. As this person, I represented someone who made it easier for others. Because I always had it. There was was always something to smoke at my place. I could always provide. Gradually, curiosity grows in those who are afraid to do so when a close friend involves them or pursues it with them. Then it begins. Then the gates open. Then you begin to spread it, to bring it to groups, to bring it to people who might have seen it later, but not with the intention of giving them the stuff because you need to sell it. It's only like you got it in the group and you're providing, because they all wanted it. Everyone was like interested in it. And so you just like came up with these solutions to let them participate in it with you. But as I'm looking back now, I really realize what it was like and who I was representing in those groups. Because that was always the case. My actions were always like the same until the end of any substance consumption in these kind of fields. What I want to say is that it was beneficial to many, including myself at the time, to see in my conscience. Now others in my circle did not find it absurd and took the opportunity to consume with a simple approach, since I was the guiding point. But as I mentioned before, I was never someone who wanted to draw people in. I never actively did that. But people like me create greater interest in others who would normally be more reserved. Now, we can argue about whether or how someone would have come to this subject if they hadn't been involved with me. I'm very glad to know that all those with whom I surrounded myself did not slip deeper into it than I did. I always provoked it. I exhausted it from the beginning, and I exhausted it to the very end. As I said, I never wanted to draw anyone in, and I didn't rely on it, because I was aware of my own self. Maybe I was not completely at peace with myself and experienced very deep moments during that time, but I did not rely on getting others into my circle. It didn't matter to me who was interested in doing things or not, because I never wanted to lead anyone down the wrong path. This is a very important point, because it is often ignored by the people in the circle who represent the center. Those who bring others on board want to keep their conscience clear and maintain the look of belittlement and validation by encouraging others to follow in their footsteps. This is really like a thing that could end your youth quite fast. Most dangerous of these people are actually those who, through their consumption, have built themselves so deep into their chimney that they can only strengthen themselves by pulling someone else in. They can only keep themselves above the surface by playing with the presence and weaknesses of others, using a constant focus to navigate through their misery by using others they can bring into the boat. These empty souls that such people often carry are filled with the fuel of other people's lives, with the goal of not sinking all the way to the bottom themselves, even if it comes with the cost that others might do. Which is really sad to say, because that is fact. There are loads of people out there like that. Those who have fallen under the spell of painting their happiness by how much they chase themselves in such an induced state are the ones closest to the downfall. Since they are the ones who have likely already developed an addiction to a certain substance. And so this cycle also had to close in this direction for me, unfortunately. But I got to see quite some things I can show now. I can tell you. I was the one who represented the neutral center, as I had an impartial attitude because I was aware of the fact that I would have a problem if I wanted to involve others. I would be making myself impure if I involved others to support my decision. I never wanted that to happen to anyone around me, and I never let it happen. But then it hit me. Suddenly, I had to be the one who met such a person, who had to let himself be seduced, who had to let himself be manipulated by someone who was much deeper in misery, who was much deeper in drugs, whose only elixir was the fuel of someone else's immaculate life. And so you were in a completely different scene. A scene with much harder drugs than just a little bit of weed. And it was only because the other person had used it in such a specific way that I could be drawn into it so deeply at that time. Because the person had cleverly managed through several people who had already been involved to get me involved as well. It was a maneuver, and it often happens with sick people who can only see themselves in their misery, can only live in it. They need the support, the environment. They need to be able to overcome their weaknesses to be able to keep themselves alive through the life elixir of others. Like all of us. This thing had been following me all the time. And then it stopped. Suddenly, the whole recording just stopped. What a mess. But yeah. I'll keep on going because there's still some stuff I gotta tell you. So where were we? Oh yeah. It was like that suddenly I had to be the one who met such a person, who had to let himself be seduced, who had to let himself be manipulated by someone who was much deeper in misery, who was much deeper in drugs, whose only elixir was the fuel of someone else's immaculate life. And so you were in a completely different scene, a scene with much harder drugs. It was no longer just a bit of weed, and it was only because the other person had used it in such a specific way that I could be drawn into it so deeply at that time. Because the other person had cleverly managed through several people who have already been brought on board before. It was a maneuver, and it often happens with sick people who can only see themselves in their misery, can only live in it because they just gave up on their beliefs for freedom and clarity. They need support, the environment to keep this going. They need to be able to overcome these weaknesses, to be able to keep themselves alive through the life elixir of others. Like all of us, we are strong in a group. Even the weak, they're hypocrites. The dependent often want others to be like them so that they can get that support back. And that was too much for me. I wasn't up for it. I couldn't see it. It was unclear to me. I was too young. And hidden under an appearance of openness, personal and cosmopolitan presence, the person had presented themselves as someone to look up to, someone to look to, someone to inspire. But behind this facade, someone was baking me, manipulating me, making me want to be that person, to be the one who lives it, like the person did, who also goes there into this clouded misery, into a life where all you do is run away, running away from everything that could be a burden. And such people who never understand where they really stand will have to stay in it until their very last breath. And years in it don't make it better, don't make it easier. How could it? We are creatures of habit. We live by habits. If you don't actively think about them and try to loosen them up or get out of them, then you just like to stay in them. If you waste your youth in consumption, you might be able to give it up, but the damage you took may not be repairable. That's why I don't understand the approach of living the excess in the years of one's youth and maybe for the rest of one's life. I can't come to terms with it because I've seen what it takes from you. And I don't want to waste my life for all the years that are still to come, that I want to fulfill with happiness, that I want to cross with effort, in which I can face the day with strength and not weakness. Let me tell you about my gradual disintegration. These people are dangerous. Dangers that you often don't see until it's too late. It took me years to see it, to understand it. I've lived through the depths. I've trudged through them. I've eaten myself into the deepest ruin of my life. Every day, back in, no breaks, only the desire for more. And all this because somebody hasn't come and made clear what they are, what they do, how they live it. Because, as I've been saying many times before, they take pleasure in taking the elixirs of others, in leading others into the misery. They are vampires. They suck your blood, your purity, for their life, for their misery, to create like-minded people. Absolutely conscienceless, without any remorse that what they are doing can destroy lives. Because it would be too brave, too clear to stand up and warn others, point out that the use of certain drugs is very dangerous, and to put the cards on the table about how the person is living now. But that doesn't happen very often. It's getting avoided. You don't hear about the hard times most of the times. They're covered up. You don't usually hear about what they're suffering from. You don't hear about it because it would just scare people. And when someone shows you how much the actual person suffers, then be wise enough to allow that to absorb until all you want to do is jump off this. So I'm telling you now, I'm coming forward and telling you everything, because it is not okay. It's not easy to get involved with hard drugs. It has to be illuminated with the truth, but you won't get that from them. So be aware and try to get a sense for yourself of which people are trying to get you under their spell, because they might do it faster than you think. So remember my words, please, okay? Who is the driver of your decision? And what does this person want from you? Where does this desire come from? And is it your desire to follow it? Is it in your interest to follow it? Are you living this life because you want to? Because you're at the center of it? Or because, like with me and the weed, you just want to make things easier by being the one who has it? Or are you someone who just gets sucked in by someone else who wants you to belong to them? Who needs to see you in such a state where they are living in? So ask yourself now, what do you do on your weekends where you venture out into the vastness of consumption, where you let yourself be chased night after night with groups of people, where you hang out in scenes where psychopharmaceuticals, painkillers, or stimulants are thrown around, and the scene even supports it because it's so great. Why do you think there is so much being talked about in any kind of scene, even in lyrics? Don't you think it has something to do with this lack of conscience and wanting to get others involved? I'm not here to insult them, and I totally understand that you might like the music they produce, and that's totally legitimate, but to trivialize something when you're going down in it and people are going down with these things all the time, I just don't think it's right. But as I said, I don't care too much. I just can't support that, because it's not something where you have to show an ID at the door of a club to get in. It's something that everyone can get into. Everyone has Spotify or any kind of streaming platforms. It's free access. If you understand the lyrics, you might think it's cool. Then you may want it. Don't take me as a typical parent telling you not to play shooter games or use swear words. I just want to encourage you to ask yourself if what you surround yourself with is really that cool. So keep questioning your truths, your own ones, then live them as best as you can. So take care of yourself and ask yourself if this is really it. This is the life. These are the circumstances. Am I this? Am I living this? Am I doing this? or is it for someone else? Am I who I want to be, or am I someone else because someone else wants me to be? Because it was only through this hardness of understanding, only through this clarity of questions, that I was able to break out of my dependency. I have dared to approach such people, to distance myself from them. It was difficult because they always want you to pull you back under their spell. You have to be in a very consistent state with yourself. Maybe you have to be even tougher than you want to be. In a way, you're able to get them out of your life. Just wipe them out. Just get out of their way and take a new path. Because you can do it too. You can dare. We all can dare. You just should never stop the question.